Afternoon, likely. Now live to the House floor here on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered by the guest chaplain, the Reverend Wallace Shepard, the Second Baptist Church from Santa Barbara, California.
Our Heavenly Father, we bless you, Lord, in this season. While our homeland faces difficult decisions and conflicts across many nations, we bow before you this day, requesting your mercy and your grace. Grant this Congress your guidance as they work collectively as one. We pray, dear Lord, as resolutions are prepared, that there will be a united commitment to the development of comprehensive laws. Lead this Congress and nation in the direction of tranquility that reflects the intent of our forefathers. Endow us as a nation to be humble as we transcend the norm without forgetting those that are in need. Anchor our hearts with prudence as we consider the development of our youth. Protect our troops as they fight for democracy and freedom throughout the world. Steer us on the path of righteousness with temperance. Bless our government and bless this nation. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1, Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Elmers.
Will everyone please join me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Without objection, the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Capps, is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor a valued constituent and a good friend, Dr. Wallace Shepard. Dr. Shepard came to the Second Baptist Church of Santa Barbara as pastor in 2006. And since then, Pastor Shepard has reestablished Santa Barbara's Martin Luther King Day event as a capstone celebration on the Central Coast of California. He is an active board member of the Endowment for Youth program, which supports the education of underprivileged children through tutoring and scholarships. Dr. Shepard also helped to found EcoFaith, a nonprofit organization that promotes conservation of energy in churches and houses of worship. He has been appointed Evangelism Director of the Central District of California and also the Vice President of the Third Sunday Fellowship for Santa Barbara and Ventura counties. But as our House has just witnessed, he is at the core a powerful presence and a humble servant in the name of his faith. And I am honored to welcome him here to Congress and thank him for his invaluable service to our community and to our country. And I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The Chair will entertain up to 15 further requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina rise?
I rise to speak on behalf of my bill, SBIR.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 1425, the Creating Jobs Through Small Business Innovation Act. This bipartisan bill is being marked up today in the House Small Business Committee. Our bill reauthorizes the SBIR and STTR programs, which have a proven track record of creating jobs, stimulating small business growth, and helping startups succeed by providing the impetus to start projects that otherwise would not have gotten off the ground. But most importantly, our bill does not cost anything. This program simply requires that the federal agencies slice out a portion of their overall budget for small firms to compete for research and development for new innovative ideas. The SBIR program is set to expire on May 31st. As chairwoman of the House Small Business Committee on Health and Technology, I believe it is vital that we expedite reauthorization of the SBIR program so that small businesses can continue to compete for the contracts that will springboard ideas, create jobs, and spur economic growth. I yield back.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island rise?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman from Rhode Island is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For nearly 20 weeks, this chamber has been discussing ways to reduce our nation's deficit, debating the merits of cutting one program or another, most times including important initiatives like job training funds, education, and health-related services. The fact of the matter is that we have to cut spending. The issue is not whether to reduce the deficit, but how we do it. If we really want to get serious about the deficit, we'd stop handing out billions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies to big oil companies, which price gouge at the pumps. Oil company profits are at a record high, and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are using high gas prices as an excuse to keep giving them billions in taxpayer handouts. Taxpayer-funded giveaways for big oil add to the deficit. My constituents gain nothing at the pumps, nor do Americans all across this country. Instead, we should be focusing on measures that will actually bring down the price of gas at the pump. It's time to bring to the House floor the measures which would release oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and legislation aimed at preventing big oil from engaging in price gouging schemes which drive up the price of oil. These measures could provide immediate relief to our constituents from the rising price of gasoline that truly threatens our economic recovery and the well-being of hardworking middle-class families. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota rise? The gentleman from Minnesota is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we've been here for about 5 months so far. It's easing up on June. Won't be long till it's summertime. And yet, Mr. Speaker, the Republican majority has not brought a single bill to create a single job. I was very pleased to hear the gentlelady from North Carolina say that they're marking up a bill on jobs. It would be the first one if it ever gets here. That's a shame. Because I think when people voted last November, they were thinking, hey, we got to do something about some jobs. And yet the Republican majority has diddled away and done everything but work on jobs. Yeah, they've tried to take away the Affordable Care Act and take away health care from people who really need it. Yeah, they've tried to do a whole lot of things, push a social agenda. They've done all these things, but they have yet to focus on the one thing that Americans need most, which is a job. And if you want to reduce the deficit, you got to have people making some money. And that means getting some jobs. People pay taxes. People would love to pay taxes, but they would do it if they had work. But they don't have work because our Republican majority has got other things to do. I yield back, but remember, jobs are the key, and I'm looking forward to Republicans to bringing a bill to the floor.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise? Without objection, the gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, in 1965, this body voted to create Medicare and Medicaid. I state, to create Medicare and Medicaid, to ensure that all seniors, disabled Americans, would always have access to health coverage, always have access to health coverage. And those today expect the same kind of coverage for themselves and their children. But over the years, my Republican colleagues have tried to weaken the programs and privatize the nets like Social Security. Sadly, history is repeating itself. Instead of focusing on priorities like creating jobs, lowering the gas prices, Republicans put forward an agenda that ends, I state, ends Medicare as we know it. So far this year, the Republicans have voted, and we can't say they haven't, they voted to eliminate guaranteed Medicare coverage for seniors, convert Medicare to a voucher program, and reopen the prescription drug donut hole and extend tax breaks for big oil companies that ship jobs overseas. Even worse, new data shows the Republican budget will kick 44 million low-income Americans off Medicaid. We must stop this insanity. Let's work together to preserve Medicare and lower the deficit. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Oregon rise?
To address the House for 1 minute.
The gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 1 minute.
Well, it's happened. Gas is over $4 a gallon. That's killing our economic recovery, American families, and small businesses. Now, Goldman Sachs, not exactly a friend of the consumer, says that 60 to 85 cents per gallon is purely useless, speculative activity. And what are the Republicans running the House of Representatives going to do about that? Nothing. They're going to pretend that future possible leasing off Virginia 10 years from now will do something about today's prices. It won't. But why are they like bait and switch? Why are they passing these phony bills and not taking on the price gouging and the speculation? Because that would mean taking on big oil and Wall Street. And guess what? They're always looking forward to the next campaign. And big oil and Wall Street have been so generous to the new majority that they don't want to upset them. So they want to pretend they stand with their constituents and consumers, but they're really standing behind big oil and Wall Street. Congratulations, guys. You just stuck it to the American people and the economy.
Gentleman's time has expired. What purpose does the gentlewoman from California rise? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May is Mental Health Month, and as the co-chair of the Mental Health Caucus, I bring to you information, especially on the military. Since 2001 to current date, we have had 2,103 military service personnel died by suicide. Suicide, my friends, in the Iraq and Afghan war. In Afghan war alone, it's over 1,000, more than some of the figures that we've listened to recently. 1 in 5 service members suffer from major depression or post-traumatic syndrome or traumatic brain injury, the TBI. It affects the military and their families, their children. There's lots of divorce because of this. Substance abuse that continues as they age. We need to expand mental health services to our military personnel and their families. Their blood and their service have earned it. We owe it to them. We've made some strides, but we've got a long way to go, Mr. Speaker. We need to reduce the stigma, accept it as the illness that it is, and expand mental health services. I ask my colleagues to join me in recognizing military members and their families during May Mental Health Month. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Delaware rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have the great pleasure today of recognizing a very special Delawarean who recently celebrated his 90th birthday. Charles P. West is one of a kind who served our state and nation with distinction as a soldier, legislator, businessman, and advocate for the values that are important to his community of Gumboro. Charlie was first elected to the Delaware House of Representatives in 1956, serving 1 two-year term. He returned to the State House in 1978 and served for 24 years before retiring in 2002. Charlie took great pride in helping his constituents. As he used to tell me all the time, he fought for the little guy. He was a fierce advocate for those who were the backbone of his district, chicken and grain farmers, small business owners, and sportsmen. Charlie and his wife of 63 years, Eleanor Lee, are good friends of mine, and they've helped me better understand what's important to our state. It's my pleasure today to wish Charles P. West happy 90th birthday and wish him and his family many more years together. Thank you. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
Yes, unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks to the Speaker.
Without objection, the gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pain at the pump is real. In this, the most difficult economy in the last 25 years, my constituents have gas prices on their mind, and with due cause. $4.18 a gallon average back in the Hoosier State, higher than the national average. Gas prices have climbed more than $1 over the last year. And frankly, with the summer travel season upon us and with the rising treacherous waters in the Mississippi threatening our refinery capability, we could see $5 a gallon gasoline in the near future. It's time to give the American people more access to American oil. Starting last week and this week, this majority in Congress will continue to move legislation that opens up our own domestic energy reserves in the Gulf of Mexico and offshore to the American people. The answer to the pain at the pump is energy independence. Part of that answer is by giving the American people more access to our own domestic reserves. I urge my colleagues to join us in supporting measures on the floor this week and last week and lead us toward that lodestar of energy independence and relieve the pain at the pump once and for all.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Missouri rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Families and small businesses have been hurting for too long. While the world is changing, Washington has made things worse by ignoring American manufacturing and stifling American ingenuity. But here's what hasn't changed. Americans are still the most creative and productive people in the world. We're still great at making things, and that's why I support the Make It in America agenda, because American manufacturing can and should be the central driver of our economy. The St. Louis region I represent has a strong base in manufacturing, and now we need to tap into that strength to bring high-quality, high-paying jobs back home. That's why my office is helping St. Louis-based heating and air conditioning manufacturer Unico, after being unfairly targeted by regulators. With the level playing field, companies like Unico can compete anywhere in the world. And if we invest in education, innovation, and infrastructure, and manufacturing, we can restore making things to its central place in our economy. I ask my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats alike, to stand with me to make these job-creating investments so we can make it in America again. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana rise?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
The gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I came down here to do a public service announcement. On behalf of all Americans, I want the Republican majority to know that the elections are over. You won the majority for now. So now start governing and stop campaigning. If you can't handle the responsibility of governing, get out of the way and let's move towards progress. This week we're considering 2 bills that Republicans claim would bring down the price of gas immediately. Let's just pretend for a fact that that's true, although we know it's not. If it's true, then why would you bring a bill to the floor that expedites drilling permits, which I could agree with, but you add in a provision to strip American people's right to challenge drilling permits that are not environmentally sound? Let's look at the next bill, reversing President Obama's Offshore Moratorium Act. That isn't the name of a bill. That's the name of a campaign speech. That's the name of political rhetoric. I would say, Mr. Speaker, that it's now time to have the responsibility of governing and take it serious so that the American people are not paying $5 a gallon per gas. So, Mr. Speaker, I would just ask that you remind the Republicans that the campaign is over, it's time to govern, and this public service announcement was brought to you by Americans for a Functional Congress.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize and congratulate the second athletics team from Texas A&M University to win a national championship in the past month. The Texas A&M Women's Equestrian Western Squad recently took home their 3rd straight national title with a 5-3 victory over Kansas State in the finals of the Varsity Equestrian National Championship in Waco, Texas. Including the overall national championship title in 2002, the A&M equestrian team has won 9 national championships since it was formed in 1999. These Lady Aggies, who hail from various parts of Texas and numerous states around the country, glided through a near-perfect season and had their eyes set on another national trophy to add to an already filled trophy case. This team is a shining example of how hard work and perseverance pays off. I would also like to applaud Coach Tana McKay and her staff for an outstanding job in guiding the Aggie women's equestrian team throughout their success. Congratulations, Aggies, on a job well done, and gig 'em.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise? The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, we've been waiting 17 weeks for the Republican majority to bring to the floor a jobs bill. I voted against the recess 2 weeks ago because I believe we ought to stay here until we get our job done, which is to create jobs for the American people. What's the majority doing? Last week they tried restricting a woman's right to choose. Then they attacked health insurance protections. This week they're trying to repeal common sense protections that prevent oil spills. Jobs? Nowhere to be found. Last week, Democratic whip Steny Hoyer unveiled Make It America. My Build America Bonds legislation is part of that agenda. In the last 2 years, every dollar invested in Build America Bonds leveraged $41 in private sector funds, or $181 billion to construct and repair schools, build bridges and roads in every state in America. These infrastructure improvements created hundreds of thousands of jobs. That's what we need to focus on, not an ideological agenda, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Armed Services may have until 5 p.m. on Tuesday to file its report to accompany H.R. 1540.
Without objection, so ordered. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
Mr. Speaker, by direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 257 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 35, House Resolution 257. Resolved, that at any time after the adoption of this resolution, the Speaker may, pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 18, declare the House resolved to the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of the bill H.R. 1231, to amend the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act to require that each 5-year offshore oil and gas leasing program offer leasing in the areas with the most prospective oil and gas resources, to establish a domestic oil and natural gas production goal, and for other purposes. The first reading of the bill shall be dispensed with. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Natural Resources. After general debate, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. The amendment recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources, now printed in the bill, shall be considered as adopted in the House and in the Committee of the Whole. The bill as amended shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. No further amendment to the bill as amended shall be in order except those printed in the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution. Each further amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question in the House or in the Committee of the Whole. All points of order against such further amendments are waived. At the conclusion of consideration of the bill for amendment, the committee shall rise and report the bill as amended to the House with such further amendments as may have been adopted. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill and amendments thereto to final passage without intervening motion, except one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
Customary 30 minutes.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the purposes of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume. During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purposes of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection, and the gentleman from New York is recognized.
House Resolution 257 provides for a structured rule for consideration of H.R. 1231. The rule makes in order 8 amendments, all of which comply with the rules of the House. Of the 8, 7 are Democratic amendments. Mr. Speaker, Today we are debating H.R. 1231, the Reversing President Obama's Offshore Moratorium Act. This legislation that will have profound impacts on our domestic energy supply, our national security, and our economy is ripe for consideration by this body. It is no secret that Americans are feeling the pain at the pump. In my congressional district in western New York, my constituents, my family, my wife, and I are routinely forced to pay in excess of $4 per gallon for gasoline for our automobiles. We need to develop policies that will lessen our dependence on foreign fossil fuels, create stability in the financial markets, and provide relief to our constituents. In addition, this piece of legislation will create American jobs. We must get our financial and energy priorities in order. We can no longer be held victim to instability in the Middle East and across the world. The United States must develop our own energy solutions which will reduce our dependence on foreign fossil fuels. And most importantly, this will create American jobs. H.R. 1231 is one more example of our conference's commitment to developing our domestic oil and natural gas resources. It adopts a philosophy that we need to drill smart, drill where the resources are, and produce our own energy. Drilling for oil and natural gas can be done safely and responsibly. There have been millions of wells drilled in the United States. There is a strong record of sound environmental practices. Total petroleum industry spillage has decreased consistently over the last 40 years. H.R. 1231 does two things. First, the legislation requires that in developing a 5-year offshore leasing plan for drilling in the outer continental shelf, that each 5-year plan must include leases for sale in the areas containing the greatest known oil and natural gas reserves. For the 2012-2017 plan being written by the Obama administration, this would mean targeted lease sales only in those areas estimated to contain 2.5 billion barrels of oil or 7.5 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. At least 50% of those areas must be made available for leasing in the 2012-2017 plan. Second, this legislation requires the implementation of production goals during the 5-year plan being written by the Obama administration. For this period, the goal would be 3 million barrels of oil per day and 10 billion cubic feet of natural gas per day from American domestic sources of energy. This increase in oil production equates to a tripling of current American offshore production and would reduce significantly foreign imports by nearly 1/3. And most importantly, this will create American jobs and protect our national security interests. I reserve the balance of my time, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from New York reserves his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from New York for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to this rule and a very strong opposition to the underlying legislation. Mr. Speaker, here we go again. Another week, another day, another bill that helps record profit-making big oil but does absolutely nothing to help American families paying $4 at the pump for gasoline. Although Republicans continue to frame these efforts as a cure for rising gas prices and a way to decrease our dependence on foreign oil, the truth is that oil prices are set on a world market. It's simply not possible for us to drill our way out of these problems. Yesterday in the Rules Committee, I offered an amendment as a standalone bill, again, that would eliminate subsidies for big oil. While I do not agree with H.R. 1231, my amendment would have done nothing to prevent this bill from moving forward. Instead, my amendment would have allowed for a separate bill to come up under this rule that would end subsidies for big oil corporations that are making money hand over fist while gouging Americans at the pump. Let me remind my Republican colleagues of the facts. 2 weeks ago, ExxonMobil announced that in the first 3 months of this year, it had made nearly $10.7 billion in profits. That's 10.7 billion, billion with a B. Look, there's nothing wrong with corporations making profits. That's what they're in business to do. What is wrong is for American taxpayers to be subsidizing wildly profitable companies at a time when too many Americans are still unemployed and struggling to pay their bills. With their tax dollars funding corporate welfare for big oil and then still paying astronomical prices at the pump, it's a double whammy for American families. With all the talk of cutting spending and reducing subsidies here in Washington, I would have thought that the Rules Committee would have made my amendment in order. Mr. Speaker, I want to remind my colleagues that energy companies are sitting on thousands of drilling leases in the Gulf of Mexico, and they're not producing anything. And despite the misleading title of this legislation, no drilling moratorium currently exists. Since October 2010, when the drilling moratorium was lifted, 39 shallow water and 10 deep water permits have been granted, roughly the same average rate even before the BP oil spill. Mr. Speaker, while H.R. 1231 may make for a good soundbite, this is not a serious solution to bringing down high gas prices. I urge my colleagues to oppose this rule and to oppose H.R. 1231, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this time I am pleased to yield as much time as he may consume. The Chairman of the Rules Committee, Mr. Dreyer of California.
The gentleman from California is recognized for as much time as he wishes to consume.
Extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Speaker, let me begin by thanking my friend, the newest member of the Rules Committee, the gentleman from Corning, New York, for a superb job that he's the way he's comported himself in the management of this rule, and for his great service on the Rules Committee. He's literally hit the ground running, and this is the third rule that he's managed, or the third bill that he's managed, second rule on the House floor, and I congratulate him from that. Mr. Speaker, I listened to the comments of my friend from Worcester, and I will say that this measure that's before us is about several things. Number one, job creation and economic growth is something that Democrats and Republicans alike say that they are concerned about, and that happens to be, continues to be, our priority. Creating jobs for the American people who are hurting right now is what this bill is all about. And at the same time, the notion of trying to free ourselves, or at least diminish the kind of dependence that we have on foreign oil. I don't personally believe that we ever in this global economy should be completely free of the flow of energy and other sources, but I do believe that we can take steps that will diminish the level of dependence that we have on sources of energy outside of our country, and that's what this measure is designed to do. I also want to touch on the very important question that was raised by my friend about the issue of subsidization by the American taxpayer of the energy industry. And I know that my friend likes to say, well, the Rules Committee could just take care of this, one fell swoop, make his amendment in order. And it was very interesting that our colleague from Boulder said that if it were to be considered on an open rule, he'd like to allow for consideration of a measure that would reduce the top corporate rate as we look at the issue of ending this kind of subsidization. Well, that is a global approach that I believe needs to be looked at by the House Ways and Means Committee, by the Energy and Commerce Committee, and I'm supportive. I'm very supportive of our doing that. But the idea of saying that we would do what my friend has proposed, actually, under the provision that my friend from Boulder said that he's supported up in the Rules Committee, it's a violation of House rules. And so the idea here is we need to do what we can to diminish the level of subsidization. I personally have opposed agriculture subsidization. I'm not a proponent of subsidization of private industry. I do think that in the context of having the highest corporate tax rate of any nation in the world, now that Japan has actually reduced their corporate rate, we need to look at ways in which we can bring that rate down and deal with closing loopholes. And that's something that President Obama talked about here in his State of the Union message. So I think that if my friend would recognize that we've had opportunities to do this when they were in the majority, we've just been in session for a matter of a few months, and the idea of saying that we haven't had addressed it yet on the floor is, I think, doesn't really pass the laugh test, because we are right now in the process of looking at overall reform, and it will include dealing with the issue of subsidies. And so I agree wholeheartedly with the need for us to step up to the plate and take this issue on. I will say that I want to express my appreciation to the distinguished chair of the Natural Resources Committee, our friend Mr. Hastings. Unfortunately, due to an illness, he's not able to be here this week, but I spoke with him yesterday, and he's doing a lot better, and he has every degree of confidence, a high level of confidence that we're going to be able to effectively address this issue of working to drive energy prices down, to diminish the kind of dependence that we have on foreign resources, foreign sources of energy, and the very, very, very important issue of creating jobs here in the United States of America, which continues to be our priority. And so I thank my friend for yielding. I encourage my colleagues to support this rule and to support the underlying legislation. And I'm happy to say that we've been able to make most all of the amendments in order that were submitted to us. And as long as they comply with the rules of the House, the cut-go provision or germane, we've tried to make most of those in order. And it's a new day. We've had more amendments considered here in the first few months of this Congress than we did in the entire last Congress. And so I think that this work product that we're going to have before us today is further evidence of that. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California yields back his time. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I consume. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a New York Times editorial entitled "The Return of Drill, Baby Drill."
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, let me just make a couple of points that the New York Times editorial made, and that was that drilling alone cannot possibly ensure energy independence in a country that uses 1/4 of the world's oil while owning only 2% of its reserves. The other point it makes is that the Energy Information Agency recently projected what would happen if the nation tripled production on the outer continental shelf. There would be no price impact at all until 2020 and only 3 cents to 5 cents a gallon in 2030. The bottom line is that we need an energy policy that does not rely solely on drilling for oil. And we tried to pass a bill that would do that, only to have strong objection from my Republican colleagues. I'd also say, because the Chairman of the Rules Committee, I just want to make sure that we're clear on one thing, because the Chairman of the Rules Committee seemed to intimate that bringing up my legislation that would allow for there to be a vote to cut taxpayer subsidies to oil companies would somehow be against the rules. It's not against the rules. It would be totally within the rules, and the Rules Committee could have made it in order. And I think, you know, one of the things that I hear when I go back home from my constituents is, why are you cutting programs that help elderly people be able to heat their homes in the winter? Why are you cutting programs that would invest in alternative energy, and at the same time, why is you have Congress protecting taxpayer subsidies to big oil companies that are making record profits? People are outraged by that. Mr. Speaker, at this time I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the Republicans act as if they're trying to help the consumer with this legislation, but all they're really doing is helping big oil, bigger profits, bigger tax breaks. I mean, the first quarter earnings for the oil companies were bigger than ever, billions of dollars in profits. Even BP, even after the disaster a year ago, was still making huge profits. And of course, we've got about $4 billion in tax breaks that the Republicans continue to give to the oil companies. No more oil is going to be brought to market because of this legislation. As my colleague from Massachusetts said, we're talking years before any oil could be brought to market. And at the same time, we have the huge environmental risks. The fact of the matter is that the BP oil spill a year ago showed us the environmental risks that are involved with deep water drilling. And there was a bipartisan commission that was put forward. Democrat and Republican testified before the Natural Resources Committee that I serve on. But no Republican effort is being made to implement those recommendations and say, okay, we need to do certain things before we can do offshore drilling in these deep water areas. Nothing at all. So when you open up these areas under this legislation to new drilling, you're just inviting another BP-type spill, because nothing's being done by the Republicans to prevent it. Now, I would point out, there's all kinds of leases out there now, on land, offshore, that the oil companies can drill, and they're not doing it. They're just stockpiling them. There's more oil production that's been put forward in the last year or so under President Obama than ever before. So we're producing oil. No one is saying that you can't drill in the areas that are already leased, and there's more production. All we're saying is, why in the world are you risking these areas that now we know after the BP spill shouldn't be put into production when you've got all kinds of other opportunities out there. Now, I offered an amendment. The gentleman, the chairman of the Rules Committee says that, you know, we were going to allow a lot of amendments. Well, they didn't allow my amendment, and my amendment simply said that the Atlantic coast for the next 5 years under the President's plan is off limits because of what happened with BP, and that we should keep that in place. But my amendment was not allowed in order. What the President has done, and what all of us are saying here is, in the aftermath of the BP spill, there are certain areas that shouldn't be allowed offshore production, and the leases shouldn't go out, because we learned from the BP spill that these areas should be off limits, because we are concerned about the environmental risk. In my case of the state of New Jersey, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars in tourism related to the shore that would be put at risk if we had another oil spill. That's where the jobs are. Tourism is the #1 industry in the state of New Jersey. Up and down the Atlantic coast, tourism is a huge business, creates all kinds of jobs. What jobs are going to be created? What minimal jobs will be created by allowing these areas to be put out to lease and allow the drilling compared to the risk of the jobs that would be destroyed?
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'd ask unanimous consent to offer to the record an editorial in the Wall Street Journal by former Democratic member Harold Ford titled "Washington versus Energy Security. Even former President Clinton calls the Obama administration's deep water drilling policy ridiculous."
Without objection, so ordered.
At this time, Mr. Speaker, I would like to yield 3 minutes to my good friend from Texas, Mr. Flores.
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Flores, is recognized for 3 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of the rule and for H.R. 1231, the reversing President Obama's Offshore Moratorium Act. When gas prices hit $4 a gallon in the summer of 2008, Congress and President Bush lifted a decades-old ban on drilling, allowing for exploration off both the Atlantic and Pacific coast. However, these plans were postponed or canceled by the Obama administration, and we are now back in the same situation of high gas prices squeezing the budgets of American families and small businesses. The facts are clear. This current administration is blocking American energy production and hurting middle-class America. On the other hand, they are also using American tax dollars to help offshore drilling in Brazil. Since President Obama took office, the national average price of gasoline has nearly doubled to $4 a gallon in most states. The energy policies of the Obama administration have resulted in the loss of hundreds of thousands of barrels of domestic daily oil production. And to make matters worse, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, offshore energy production is expected to drop 13% in 2011. It's not too late to change our country's course of action and to begin to undo the damage done by these policies. The energy reserves off our coast and under our public lands belong to the American taxpayers and should be utilized in an efficient and environmentally safe manner to create jobs, grow our economy, lower energy prices, and enhance our national security by reducing our dependence on foreign oil. The federal government also has the ability to realize substantial revenues through the leasing of these areas, which will help pay down our $14 trillion of national debt. According to the CBO, enacting H.R. 1231 will increase receipts to the federal treasury by about $800 million over the next 10 years. This important legislation will require the Obama administration to expand access to areas offshore that contain the most oil and natural gas reserves. When we do so, we will improve our energy security and grow American jobs. I want to thank Chairman Hastings for his efforts in bringing H.R. 1231 along with 2 other American Energy Initiative bills to the floor. I also would like to offer special appreciation to Chairman Hastings for allowing me to propose an amendment, to have an amendment added to H.R. 1229, which includes language from a bill I recently introduced and which extends certain leases affected by the administration's moratorium for a year. I urge my colleagues to support the rule and the underlying legislation. I yield back.
The gentleman from Texas yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Without objection.
I am amazed that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle continue to be apologists for big oil. The fact of the matter is that big oil in this country is about making profits for big oil. They don't seem to care very much about the consumer. And I hold this chart up, Mr. Speaker, just to kind of prove a point that notwithstanding the fact that they're raising prices on consumers, in the first quarter of this year, as compared to last year, all these oil companies, Exxon, Oxy, Conoco, Chevron, BP, all made record profits. Exxon is up 69%. They made $10.7 billion in profits in the first quarter. And what is particularly outrageous is they're making all this money, and my friends on the other side of the aisle continue to protect the subsidies and the tax breaks that they get. It's outrageous. They cut money for poor families trying to heat their homes in the winter, and on the other hand, they go to their way to protect big oil from any amendment that we can bring to the floor here to be able to go after these subsidies and tax breaks. My colleague from California, the chairman of the Rules Committee, says, oh, he's sympathetic. Well, we don't want your sympathy. We want your vote. And, you know, I brought this amendment to go after the subsidies that the oil companies currently enjoy, taxpayer-funded subsidies, 3 times in the Rules Committee. All 3 times it was voted down. So enough is enough. And in terms of this rule, I want to point out something. You know, there was an amendment offered by the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Boswell. It was germane. It complied with the Republicans' new cut-go rules, and it simply said this: it required that anyone who gets a lease under this bill would have to give preference to hiring veterans, the men and women who we have sent over to Afghanistan and Iraq. When they come back, you know, we ought to go out of our way to make sure they have a job. This amendment was voted down in the Rules Committee, an amendment to help our veterans. You know, I mean, it is unbelievable to me that the Republicans voted this amendment down. Maybe there's a reason someone could give me on the other side of the aisle as to why this was ruled out of order. It was germane. It complied with the cut-go rules. But, I mean, the idea that we're not going out of our way to help our veterans, I think, is unconscionable. And I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this time, I'm pleased to yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Johnson.
The gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise in strong support of the Reversing President Obama's Offshore Moratorium Act, which will lift the President's ban on new offshore drilling by requiring the administration to do what my constituents in eastern and southeastern Ohio have been calling for Congress to do: open up for production the areas that contain the most oil and natural gas resources right here in America. The hardworking people of my district have made it abundantly clear that their #1 concern is the rising price of gas at the pumps. Over the past week, this side of the aisle has begun to show the American people that we are serious about addressing our energy crisis, and we will not succumb to bringing up bogus proposals that may poll well in the court of public opinion, but only result in higher gas prices. In 2008, our country was also experiencing record high prices at the pump. And in logical, common-sense response to those record high prices, that Congress and that President took action to end a decades-long drilling ban on offshore by opening up new areas in the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean for exploration and production. Unfortunately, this administration has reversed the will of the people and has taken steps to reinstate this moratorium from new lease sales in these offshore areas. But not only has the administration abandoned the plan to go forward with opening up new areas for production, they have also canceled previously scheduled lease sales. We are now again faced with rising prices at the pump, and instead of being able to focus on new ways to make America energy secure, we're forced to bring up legislation that will do again what Congress did 3 years ago. Mr. Speaker, recently the Secretary of the Interior testified before the Natural Resources Committee. And between his testimony and answers to questions, he made it painfully obvious that the administration does not have a real national energy strategy. Well, today, with this legislation, we're going to help the Secretary and the administration take a big step toward developing a real energy plan for America. This legislation requires the administration and the Secretary of the Interior to set specific goals on the amount of oil and natural gas production that is estimated from each of the 5-year lease plans contained in this legislation. During my 26-plus year career in the United States Air Force, We set goals and objectives, and then we set out about working hard to not only meet them but exceed them. This legislation sets the production goals at a level that is triple the level of America's current production, and therefore reduces foreign imports by 1/3. Once this legislation is adopted, we will send a signal to the world oil markets that America means business when it comes to our energy future. And I am fully confident that if we set the bar high, as this legislation does, American drive and ingenuity will rise to the occasion and will exceed this goal. If we're going to become energy secure, Mr. Speaker, we must increase our energy production, not limit it. And we need to commit ourselves to developing our own resources. That is why I strongly support the Reversing President Obama's Offshore Moratorium Act, and I urge my colleagues to do the same. I'll yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Ohio yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves, and the gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 10 seconds. It appears, based on what I'm hearing here, that what the Republicans are dedicated to is helping the oil companies make more profits, but doing nothing to help the consumer. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, the ranking member on the Resources Committee, Mr. Markey.
I thank the gentleman so much.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 5 minutes.
So here's where we are. The Republicans, this is unbelievable, are blocking any legislation from passing that is going to have new safety rules for drilling off of the beaches of the United States 1 year after the BP spill. They're blocking any new safety legislation to make sure that the United States, which has 4 times the fatality rate of countries in Europe in drilling off our shores, have rules that are put on the books that make sure that those worst of all safety violators, these companies that drill off of our shores, have those new safety rules. Number 2, the Republicans are fighting any attempts to take away the $4 billion in tax breaks, which the American consumer gives to the oil companies each year, even as the oil companies report ExxonMobil $10 billion, Shell $8 billion, BP $7 billion, Chevron $6 billion, etc. for the last 3 months. That's how much money they made. The Republicans think that's not enough money, even as people get tipped upside down and have money shaken out of their pockets at the gas pump. No, not enough money. They also need to give the oil companies tax breaks. That's the Republican perspective. And you want to know what else they do? They also slash the renewable energy budget, the clean energy budget, by 70%. So you're a kid out there in America, you're in the 6th grade, you're looking at America for the 21st century. Here's what the Republicans are doing. They're slashing the solar and wind budget by 70%. They are saying to the oil companies, you don't need any more safety off of the beaches to drill. They're saying that your profits are not windfall profits, which of course they are in the oil industry, but instead, here's what we're going to let you do. We're going to let you drill off of the beaches of California for oil, off of the beaches of Florida for oil. We're going to let you drill off the beaches, 3 miles off of the coast, by the way, 3 miles off the beaches of Cape Cod, of Georges Bank. We're going to turn Georges Bank into ExxonMobil's bank. We're going to turn not shellfish into a product that we sell, but Shell oil will be out there. That's the agenda for the Republican Party. This is almost surreal that they want to take the tax breaks that the oil industry has, fight like the devil to protect them, even as they want to cut Medicare for grandma and cut wind and energy as the energy sources for the future. It's almost like they think it's 1958, and gasoline is 28 cents a gallon. And we're all cruising around, pretending that we're not part of the rest of the world. So this debate today is kind of a microcosm of what's wrong with Republican policies, that before, I think, people want themselves to see oil rigs off of their beaches in California and North Carolina, in Massachusetts, in Maine, in California, the least I think that you owe these people is that you have new safety rules that reflect what happened. You have that BP Commission report implemented. But you guys, you're running ahead
as though nothing has happened. And by the way, you want to know what else is really wrong here? We know because of Goldman Sachs that there's $20 to $30 a barrel of oil of increase in price over the last 11 weeks comes from speculators. And what you're doing is you guys are trying to kneecap the speculator cops on the beat so that they're not even out there policing these speculators. And you're trying to reduce the budget for the speculator cops, the people who will be chasing down these speculators. And so it's also ExxonMobil. It's also Shell and BP and Chevron and ConocoPhillips. And it's just, by the way, at least you're true to your colors. At least this is really what you believe in. And you don't believe in wind and solar, so you're cutting that budget by 70%. And you want to open up the beaches as well for drilling in the states that don't want oil rigs off their beaches. I mean, my goodness, this is something that at least you should be able to respect. So, and by the way, and you also disapprove the using of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve as a weapon to tell speculators you could go bankrupt because we're going to use the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, the 700 million barrels of oil that the U.S. has stored. So this is a very important debate to have. I'm glad we're having it today because this drill, baby, drill just says, yeah, your policy is not all of the above. It's oil above all. Everything else gets defunded.
Time is expired. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I'm pleased to yield 3 minutes to the gentle lady from North Carolina, Ms. Fox.
The gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for yielding time. Mr. Speaker, Americans are demanding relief at the pump and for Congress to create an environment that creates jobs. Republicans are answering that demand with practical solutions that will have an immediate impact on the price of gasoline, energy security, and jobs. Liberal Democrats are still adhering to the sort of demagoguery that may score political points with their base, but that doesn't create a single job, nor does it reduce the cost of energy by 1 cent. Republicans strongly believe that energy security depends on strong domestic energy production. The Liberal Democrats and President Obama have actively blocked and delayed American energy production, destroying jobs, raising energy prices, and making the U.S. more reliant on unstable foreign countries for energy. This is hurting American families and small businesses who are vital to creating the new private sector jobs we desperately need during this time of high unemployment. The liberal proposals fail to create jobs in America, but help create jobs overseas for the citizens of foreign nations. President Obama's reckless moratorium on domestic energy production has cost the Gulf Coast region 12,000 jobs since it was enacted last year. His moratorium now threatens an additional loss of over 24,000 jobs in the Gulf and 36,000 jobs nationwide if we do not reverse this dangerous liberal endeavor. Republicans believe that energy security will not only create jobs, but will also help reduce the deficit. According to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, H.R. 1231 will generate $800 million in revenue over 10 years while reducing foreign oil imports by nearly 1/3. The solution provided by the Democrat elites, more taxes, resulting in higher costs that will get passed on to American families. The nonpartisan Congressional Research Service says Democrat tax increases, quote, would make oil and natural gas more expensive for U.S. customers, end quote, and even some liberals admit it would cost thousands of jobs. Renowned economist Dr. Joseph Mason has stated that Republican proposals for domestic energy production will create 1.2 million American jobs. If the liberal Democrats care about our energy security, prices at the pump, job creation, and strengthening our domestic energy capabilities, they would join Republicans in supporting this rule and the underlying bill. Mr. Speaker, American families cannot wait any longer for relief at the pump. American families cannot wait any longer for jobs. If you stand with American families, if you stand with American energy security, and if you stand for job creation in America, I urge my colleagues to support this rule and the underlying bill, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 10 seconds. Mr. Speaker, my colleague on the Rules Committee talked about all the people she stands with. I want to know why she didn't stand with the veterans last night when we had a vote that would help make sure that our veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan would have so-called new jobs that were going to be created. I find it unconscionable that the Rules Committee did not make that amendment in order, the Boswell Amendment. At this time, I'd like to yield 2.5 minutes to the gentlewoman from Hawaii, Ms. Hirono.
Gentlewoman from Hawaii is recognized for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, indeed, the taxpayers are waiting for relief at the pump, but this bill is not it. I rise in opposition to this rule and to H.R. 1231. Once again, the House will vote on Republican legislation that takes a let's put all our eggs in one basket approach to our national energy policy. And what's their answer to high gas prices? Drill for more oil offshore. To high gas prices, drill for more oil offshore and preserve taxpayer subsidies for big oil. Subsidies from us taxpayers. This helps them rake in $35 billion in profits in the first quarter of 2011 alone. Meanwhile, my taxpayers in Hana, Maui have to pay over $6 per gallon to fill up their cars to go to work. Do these taxpayers get a subsidy? No. People in Hawaii pay the highest gas prices in the country. When I was in Hawaii recently, my constituents were astonished to hear about the record profits and continuing subsidies that are provided to big oil. At the same time that the Republican majority is defending subsidies for oil companies, which don't lower the price at the pump, they're also working to cut federal funding for clean, alternative energy, public transit, energy-efficient programs. They also, adding insult to injury, want to disarm the Commodities Future Trading Commission, which is the main cop on the beat when it comes to oil speculation. Republicans also want to pretend that there are no consequences to the near indiscriminate drilling authorized by these bills. Less than a year after the catastrophic BP oil spill, which was caused by lax regulation of a dangerous industry, they want us to undo the reforms that have been made. And for what? The Energy Department's Energy Information Administration estimates that drilling authorized by these bills may lead to a measly 1.6% increase in domestic energy production from 2012 to 2030. That is not a prescription for relieving pain at the pump in the short term, and is a poor strategy for long-term energy security. Instead, we need to invest in fuel-efficient technologies and expand our transportation options. We need to focus on harnessing clean, alternative energy sources, and that way we can leave our children a cleaner, healthier planet, wean ourselves from foreign oil. I urge my colleagues to vote against this rule and against this drill-only bill. I yield back my time.
Gentlewoman yields back. Gentleman